Hey everybody, welcome back to the Be Your Own Bestie podcast. I'm Nikki, your host, and I'm so excited to be back recording another video. First thing is first, thank you so much for the support on my last video. The last video I did was basically reintroducing this podcast, explaining the whole inspiration behind the title and everything, and just talking about like self-respect, having your own back, becoming your own best friend, hence the title of this podcast. So if you're interested in that, you can go check it out. But yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for the support on that video because I think before posting that video, I was at like 30 something subscribers, and just with that one, I'm at like 60 something. Very small numbers, but like that can fill a room. Like if there were 60 people in here, like if all of you were in here right now, it would be very crowded. And so like to me, that's a lot of people, and I'm very grateful for the support. And also especially because if you don't know, I've had also a main YouTube channel for like 7 years now. I started it in my senior year of high school. And to be fair, I've been very on and off with it. I have not been very consistent until like the last few months / like last year I've been posting more. But even on that channel, I'm like only at like 760 subscribers now after like 7 years. So the fact that I've only recently started this podcast channel and there's already like over 60 of you here is just really cool to me. And like genuinely, it's not about the numbers for me. It's just like really cool that many people care enough about what I have to say that they want to stick around and, you know, for the next episode. So yeah, and I'm just excited to see that people are actually wanting to be involved with it because my hope is that this podcast can, at least in a small way, bring more positivity to the world, help people overcome their limiting beliefs and believe in themselves more, be kinder to themselves, all of that fun stuff. So, oh my God, I need to fix my posture. I'm so sorry. Anyways, with that being said, I did just mention what this video will be about. You've seen the title. And so today we are going to be talking about limiting beliefs. And this is a very big topic. If you're in any of the self-help spiritual communities online, I'm sure you've come across this topic of limiting beliefs. It'd be pretty much impossible to not come across it if you're in those communities online. So I'm aware it's already been talked about so much and by so many like gurus and stuff online. I've watched probably every single video you can about limiting beliefs because I just watch so much of that content. But I still feel like I have a valuable perspective to add to it because a lot of that content I've personally consumed and that you have likely consumed regarding this topic is coming from people who are already like gurus in this stuff. Like they are successful influencers in the spiritual and self-help industries. Like I love that content, but sometimes when somebody already has like 1 million subscribers and they're saying, oh, you just need to overcome your limiting beliefs and you will be successful and have your dream life and whatever, like they make it sound so easy. And that can be really hard to believe when it's coming from somebody's mouth who is like already so successful and already has a huge platform and, you know, already has all these things to their benefit and like they're already in that place where they've overcome all this stuff. So I feel like it's just maybe more relatable and it feels more accessible for it to be coming from somebody who is very much so not that. Like literally, I'm just a girl who is interested in self-help and spirituality and self-development and all that stuff. And in the last like couple years especially, I'd say I've taken it a lot more seriously. Before I even get into everything, I just want to preface by saying, obviously, like I just said, there's a lot of other people online who talk about this. So take everything I say with a grain of salt as always. I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to like the facts of it. Like, do these things work? I'm just talking from my personal experience and how trying to overcome my own limiting beliefs and stuff and working on my mindset and all that, how it has helped me, and to show you that like if a regular 23-year-old girl like me, somebody who has struggled with people pleasing, especially like somebody who has a history of making herself smaller, if I can work on this and expand my energy like this and overcome my limiting beliefs as somebody who is prone to making herself smaller and a people pleaser, then you can do it too, you know? So anyways, with all that being said, let's get into the actual video. I think a natural good place to start is the question of where do these limiting beliefs actually come from? And specifically, I feel like it's really important to identify where they come from and understanding that they can come from so many different places. Like, I feel like when I first started getting into all this stuff, I had this very not true understanding of like where your core beliefs come from. And I was like, oh, they come from your parents, right? Like your parents are the ones who raise you and instill values in you and everything. And thus they're like the main influence of how you turn out as a person. But I only realized as I started digging more and more into this stuff that honestly for me, I feel like 80-90% of my core beliefs, of my limiting beliefs, didn't come from how I was raised necessarily. It came more so from generally like the external world, the people around me, the places in which I grew up, the people I was around, society as a whole, media, like all of that stuff I feel like impacted me and my limiting beliefs way more than actually my parents did. So I just want to start out with that like if you're wanting to dive into all of this stuff and identify what is holding you back, you have to explore every aspect of your life. Like really, that's why I feel like it's so significant in therapy and stuff to dig back into your childhood, because that is where your core beliefs are formed. So obviously everybody's upbringing is so different, and there are just like so many different ways in which kids can become messed up and develop limiting beliefs and negative thought patterns and everything like that. Super fun. So yeah, but obviously I can only speak to my experience. For example, I would say I used to have a limiting belief in terms of people pleasing. I've done a whole episode also on people pleasing. For me, the limiting belief when it comes to that was I'm a bad person if people dislike me. If I disagree with people, then they won't like me and that makes me a bad person. I have to make myself smaller so other people will like me. Like all of these things are the core / limiting beliefs that came along with being a people pleaser. I'm still working on it, but for me, undoing that was identifying what happened to my childhood to make me feel that way. For me, I had a lot of friendships where people kind of had to put me down a little bit, make me smaller. Obviously, they weren't trying to do this, but they unknowingly were doing this to me, making me feel smaller so that they could feel better about themselves. So my brain then obviously developed this belief to protect me, which was like, you know, you'll continue to maintain these relationships in your life and be safe in these relationships if you keep making yourself smaller. And if you keep just acting as a people pleaser, people will like you and then you'll be safe and you'll have people around you. So that's the belief I developed. In order to undo that, I had to identify where it came from. Once I identified where it came from, it was so clear to me that it's an illusion, that I'm actually not any lesser than anybody else, that I'm not a small person, that I'm not made to please people, that I do have my own opinions and thoughts on things. And I started realizing that and replacing the limiting belief of I have to make myself smaller to have other people like me into now I really can say it with certainty and like say it with my chest that the core belief I have now, or at least the core belief I'm really trying to implement at this time in my life, is if I have my energy be expansive and authentic, and if I truly just try to be who I am authentically, that will attract the right people into my life. That will attract higher vibe people. That will be the best thing for me and for the people around me, because when I'm in a positive energy, they're in a positive energy. So like that's another example of a huge limiting belief that I literally have had to constantly rewrite. And I don't care who you are, no matter where you came from, you have limiting beliefs. Whether you know it or not, we are all raised in a society and we are all raised as children before we become adults, right? And if you remember being a child, you will remember that your whole existence was pretty much to conform to doing what adults told you to do. Even if you were a rebellious kid, being put in that state of being a child, the dynamic is very much so like you are the child, I'm the adult, you listen to me, you conform to what we tell you to do. So everybody is raised that way, or most people are raised that way as a child. I feel like it's very rare that children are raised by their parents as being on an equal plane of their parents. I think that's becoming more of a thing, which I'm happy about, like gentle parenting in terms of explaining to your kid why you're telling them no instead of just saying no and being the authority in that situation. Anyways, the reason for me saying that is that no matter who you are, you were raised as a child. If you were raised as a child, that most likely means you were put in a lot of situations where you were told that the adult is the authority, and essentially you were told by somebody else what to do, how to behave, how to live your life, to literally get into line. Like literally in elementary school, you were told to get into line and not leave that line. Also metaphorically, you were told to act in certain ways, conform in certain ways. All of these things that we are all programmed with as kids, whether we know it or not. And that programming does not leave you. Just because you grow up and you're older now doesn't mean those beliefs leave your brain. You have to actively undo them. You have to actively undo this idea that you listen to everybody else, that other people decide for you what to do. Like, you have to actively sit down and realize that you have autonomy over your life, that you get to decide how you act, you get to decide what you believe, you get to decide what you want to do with your life. Like, even though it seems so obvious that, like, when you're an adult, you have control of your life, you have your own responsibilities, it is not that obvious. Like, I really feel like it has to be an active thing where you decide that you're going to teach yourself how to listen to yourself, how to listen to what you actually want, how to be your own authority, how to make your own decisions. I really think the beginning to noticing your limiting beliefs, or when you begin developing the desire to overcome your limiting beliefs, for a lot of people is when you simply have this moment where you realize that you've been asleep your whole life, pretty much, that you've been operating just based off of your programming and off of what you were told to do and how you were told to behave as a kid. And you wake up one day and you realize that you don't have any joy in your life. You realize that you were literally just a cog in the machine, functioning that way and literally only functioning based off of what you always thought you should do instead of what you wanted to do. And I feel like a lot of people have that wake up call, which usually happens as a midlife crisis. That's why that's such a cliche. I feel like a lot of people wake up 20 years into their career realizing that they actually don't enjoy what they're doing with their life, and now they have this whole family and this whole career and all of these perfect things on the outside, or they look perfect on the outside, but internally they don't gain any bliss from it because they never reflected and asked themselves what they individually want out of their lives. Because we are all essentially told when we're growing up, we're told this is what you want, this is the life you want, this is the type of partner you want, this is what you want for your life, you want the white picket fence thing, and you want the nuclear family. And like, we're all told on some level, whether literally to our face or subconsciously, we're all told, like, this is the image of the life you should want, here, go pursue it. And then you wake up one day and you realize, wait, I never wanted that in the first place. So I feel like it could be a very rude awakening for a lot of people when you start to overcome your limiting beliefs. For me, this definitely happened, I would say, in my first corporate job. I worked in insurance for 8 months, and the only reason I did that was because, like I said, I went to university because I thought I had to. I thought it was the only option. I then got a corporate job because that's what you're supposed to do, right? None of my own actual thought and opinions went into it. It was purely just based off of my core beliefs and off of this is the limited way in which you are supposed to live your life. So then I went ahead and I did that. I worked there for 8 months. I realized, oh my God, I'm so miserable. I'm spiraling into depression again. I do not want to live the next 40 years of my life like this. That sounds like absolute hell. That sounds like survival, not living, you know? So for me, that was like a really big wake-up call when I just got a taste of the corporate lifestyle. I got a taste of what I had thought my whole life that I was supposed to do, that I thought it was all leading up to. And it was then that I realized, oh my God, I have been programmed essentially to think that I don't have control over my life. Like, the only reason I ended up here is because I did not think that I was allowed to make my own decisions, essentially. And I realized, like, actually, no, I can decide to make my own money. I can decide to work for myself. I can decide to be creative. I can decide to pursue the things I want to do. I can decide to live a fulfilling, abundant life if I want to. And that had not occurred to me until I really felt the depths of really despising my life. And I find it so odd if you really look at the ways in which these things are presented to us as normal to feel this way. Like, even when you're just growing up as a kid, you're subconsciously absorbing all this stuff, like jokes about the commute to work and your annoying coworker and, oh, I need my 6th coffee of the day and Sunday scaries and like all of these like boring corporate jokey things. But you hear these types of jokes growing up, and it subconsciously, I feel like, puts it in your brain that like, oh, this is just what life is like. Like, everybody jokes around about this. Everybody jokes around about the awful traffic, about how much they hate their job. And that's just what life is. You go do the career that you thought you should do, and then you try to survive and be okay with it by making jokes about it, by making jokes about how much you hate it. And like, that is presented as so normal in the media and by the adults around you who you hear saying these things also. And you're like, this is just what life looks like. I literally used to think, I swear, as a kid, I thought the way in which you had to make money had to be doing something that you hated. Like, that is literally how I understood work was, oh, you grow up to be an adult and you get a job and you need this job that you hate so that you can pay your bills and put food on the table and everything, and you just joke around about how much you hate it, and that's just life, and you just got to get by, and you just got to trudge along, and yeah, it's tough, but ultimately you don't have control. Like, I feel like that really is the narrative that was instilled into my brain just like through the media. I wouldn't even say like the people around me really put that into my head. But when you take a step back for a second and reflect on that, like that is actually insane. The fact that it's so normalized that we're all these like born as free human beings, right? We all come to this earth born as free human beings who should be able to build the lives we want. And then we all literally get told that, no, this is how you live your life, and it's normal to have a career that you're miserable in for 40 years, and you just have to joke about it and get by, and you'll be fine. And we all, or a lot of us, just kind of nod along and are like, okay, I guess that's how it is, and it sucks. But like, that is such a huge mentality, is the victim mentality of like, yeah, it sucks, but that's just how life is. And like, you hear that type of advice from a lot of old people who, like, you know, somebody in my generation, Gen Z, will be complaining about their job or whatever, and their response from the older generation is always, yeah, that's life though, you just gotta trudge along, you know, like you just gotta wake up and go to work every day. Like, what if I don't actually? What if I decide to work for myself? What if I decide to make money in a way that I actually want to make money in? What if I decide to live a life that I like? Did you ever think about that? Like, when you actually just for literally 1 second step outside of what everybody has told you your whole life, you're like, wait, that's actually insane. The only reason that I thought it was true is because everybody was saying that. And then you feel crazy for questioning it, but really everybody else is crazy because they're believing in this without questioning it. Like, you should never assume something is true until you have actively had your own critical thinking about it. Like, you need to take a step back regarding all of your beliefs about the world, about yourself, about the people around you. Take a step back, reflect on them, and ask yourself, is this really true? Does this actually make logical sense? And something like that, like about, you know, the cog in the machine kind of thing, if you take a step back for a second and you realize how crazy that is, that we treat humans like robots, and that actually we simply don't have to live that life if we choose not to. It's like crazy to realize that so many people go throughout their whole lives living that way simply because they never took a minute to question that that was normal or that that was okay. Okay, brief intermission. I just had to take a break because I had a doctor's appointment and it was going to be real quick, so I just took a little break and came back to finish recording. And I looked at Audacity, which is where I record my audio. I realized I forgot to stop the audio recording. I stopped the camera, but this has now been recording for 2 hours and 10 minutes. I have not been talking for that long. That's so funny. Like, it's literally just been... That just recorded a whole conversation I had with my mom, accidentally. Alright, well, anyways, why don't we just continue on with the episode. So how do you get to that point where you actually decide you want to make a change? Like, how do you get to the place where you actually are prompted to start questioning these beliefs and supporting yourself in questioning these beliefs? So I wanted to give some ideas for a few creators whose content I've watched for a really long time now. And I feel like I can attribute a lot of like the reason for why I started reflecting on this stuff because of these creators, because I started watching their content and seeing how they thought for themselves, how they thought differently, how they made the lives they wanted for themselves, and seeing that enough, like if you saturate your mind enough with that type of content, inevitably you're going to start thinking that way. Like, you know how they say, like, you are the summary of the 5 people you hang around the most? I think that's also at least partially true for parasocial relationships. Like, what content are you consuming? I mean, nowadays, I know for me, and this is not good, but I know for me, especially with like my freelancing stuff right now, like dog walking and stuff, I have like a YouTube video, a podcast, something on in the background, like at all times. And it's tempting to have that be like drama channels and like really dumb, silly, goofy podcasts and stuff. Or like sometimes I do still watch that stuff, don't get me wrong. The Basement Yard, I love that show. It's so stupid, but like in the best way. But like the goal is that at least like 60% of the time you're watching content that is actually adding some knowledge, adding something to your life, adding self-belief, expanding your mind, you know, like that's my goal, is for most of the time that I'm watching that type of content. So a few creators that I started watching who really inspire that in me, just off the top of my head, one big one was Aaron Doughty. He talks a lot about identity shifting and pretty much like developing, the new version of yourself and losing identification with the old version of yourself. So Aaron Doughty is a big one. Also, generally, the Diary of a CEO podcast, he has a lot of people on who talk about that type of stuff. Basically, he just interviews people who have come very far in their life, and he asks them about pretty much how they got there. And so it's a very fascinating show to see people who came from some very rough beginnings, or not, but some people on that show did come from very rough beginnings, and now they're like millionaires and stuff. So it's really cool to witness that and to listen to that podcast. Also, Vibes and Frequencies, as it says in the title, that it's very much so such like a hippie woo-woo channel, but that's why I love it, because it really contributed for me to really opening my mind, like beyond just like businessy entrepreneurial mindsets and like critical thinking and stuff. This is definitely more of a spiritual channel, which helped me expand my mind into like the possibilities of life itself, the possibilities of who you can become and of how you can transform your life more so like on the spiritual end of things. So if you're into spirituality and kind of that more open-minded way of thinking, then I would recommend that channel. He has amazing energy about him, and I always feel like so empowered after I watch his videos, and I always feel like literally anything is possible after I watch his videos. So Vibes and Frequencies is a big one. There are probably like so many other ones, but I just can't think of them off the top of my head right now. But there are so many people online that can help you to like expand your mind, see things in new ways. Ali Abdaal is a great creator. He's more so on like the businessy end of things and productivity end of things. Also, a podcast I recently got into, is the Next Level Soul podcast. Again, much more so on the spiritual end of things. But again, I feel like that podcast really helps me put things into perspective, which is why I like it. Alicia Gogan, she basically does something like this where she just like sits down and she talks to the camera about anything like self-help, development, mental health, mindfulness, fitness, nutrition, women's health, like so much valuable stuff. So yeah, there's a random list of a bunch of very different types of creators, but the one thing they have in common is after watching this type of content, I always feel more empowered. I always feel like I've expanded my mind to new possibilities. And especially on the note of Alicia Gogan and other women like that online, specifically if you're also a young woman watching this, like watching other young women who are successful, like entrepreneurs, freelancers online is so empowering. I noticed like a couple years back, all of the self-help people I would watch were men. And I noticed that I wasn't really listening to that many women. And I was like, okay, that's some internalized misogyny here. But I really noticed when I started watching more content by women, especially around my age, it made me feel really empowered. I think that is something really important, is if you're able to watch content from people who you can see parts of yourself in them, it really helps make it feel more tangible and real to you that you can also overcome your limiting beliefs and become the 2.0 version of yourself and everything like that. Definitely when I started watching her, and like there's this other girl I came across recently. Her channel name is Scripsbo or something like that. I'll put it on the screen because I don't know how to say it properly, but basically she's, I think, just a little bit older than me, and she's a full-time freelance video editor who edits videos for like really big YouTubers with like millions of followers. And following her, like somebody who edits videos full-time, again, it just makes it feel that much more tangible and realistic that like, oh, this girl who also actually kind of looks like me has achieved pretty much the lifestyle that I want to achieve. She runs her own schedule. She's very assertive and empowered in terms of how much she charges for her services. She built this whole thing up herself, And so it's really inspiring for me to just see other people who remind me of myself and see them actively like having created and living their dream life. So I would say that's also a really important part of it, even though it sounds kind of superficial. At the end of the day, in this day and age, you're going to be consuming content regardless. So you may as well make it something curated towards actually helping you in your self-growth and self-development journey. So I feel like that is a huge thing for also overcoming limiting beliefs, because when you see somebody who reminds you of yourself living the life that you want to live in the future, but that you for some reason feel like there's some barrier between you and that life, it's like you're almost seeing another version of yourself, like seeing that person already living that life, and it helps put it into your head, like the vision of what it would look like if you lived that life, and seeing that it is possible. And ultimately that just helps crumble down the limiting beliefs a little bit more. It also makes it feel way more tangible because these people are not celebrities. Like a lot of the people I just noted are literally just random people, very humble people, not nepo babies or anything like that. They came from very normal beginnings that a lot of people can relate to also, and they built themselves up to the point where they're now doing these types of things for a full-time living. It also gives you literal evidence for why the life you want to achieve is possible for you, whether it's your own self-doubt or the people around you who are contributing to maintaining your limiting beliefs. If you have literal evidence of like, no, but this girl who was like in a very similar situation overcame that and she became this version of herself, if you have that evidence to literally reference, you have a very good reason to ignore all of those voices. Like, why would you think I would believe you when you tell me that something is impossible when I literally have evidence for it right here? It is literally existing in the real world that somebody is living the life I want to live, so of course it's possible for me. Why wouldn't it be? So I feel like I've been very vague in this video, and I've kind of been jumping all over the place about just random thoughts and things about this topic that are in my head, but I hope it's like had some clarity to it in terms of finding where your limiting beliefs come from, actually dissecting them and working on them and replacing them with beliefs that are expansive, that are hopeful, that have self-belief instilled in them. That's generally what I'm trying to get at as like the overall theme of this video, so I hope that has come across. But I also want to get a little bit more specific and clear in terms of like the actual tangible things you can do or that I did that personally helped me in terms of overcoming my limiting beliefs. So I have 6 things that I will list right now, and hopefully at least one of these can help you. And I challenge you, this is your homework for watching this video or listening to this video, is to practice at least one of these today. I promise these things are very easy. You can literally do them within like 2 minutes, some of these things, and 2 minutes a day is better than nothing a day. So even if you start there, that is what gets the ball rolling to you becoming that version of yourself. If you always tell yourself like, no, I need to sit down and do an hour-long journaling session, then you're never gonna do it. I definitely still do that to myself sometimes, where I'm like, you need to sit down for 3 hours and you need to dissect your whole being so that you can work on yourself and help yourself with identity shifting and everything like that. I still do that sometimes, where I tell myself like, you need to be so hardcore about this, you need to be so serious about this. But in reality, the things that have actually helped me get to this point where I am versus who I used to be, and by the way, I'm still very much so working all of this stuff, but the person I was a year ago was very different from the person I am now. And the only way I was able to do that was not by me being super serious and committed to it and being like super hardcore about it and like making self-development my life. Like, no, what got me here was being able to implement, like, say one day all I could do was write a gratitude list for that day or write one sentence about what I want my future life to look like. Like, if that's all I could do for that day, that is way better than me stewing in the fact that I didn't have enough energy to do more that day, you know? So I just want to emphasize before I talk about these practices that doing a minute of this every day will get you way further in a year than putting so much pressure on yourself to overcome your limiting beliefs so quickly. It's really the addition of small things over time that actually makes an impact. And if you start it with less pressure and you start it with just saying like, I'm going to do 1 journal entry per day, or I'm going to do 1 meditation per day. Like if you start it super simple and easy like that, inevitably it is going to snowball because it feels good to do these practices. It feels good to challenge your limiting beliefs and expand your way of thinking. And you'll inevitably just therefore get closer and closer and closer to your ideal self, to your higher self, whatever you want to call it. So first one I'm going to mention is journaling. This is a huge one for me. I have journaled for years and years and years. For most of my life, I used it just as like a stream of consciousness to get my thoughts out and kind of complain to a piece of paper instead of complaining to my real life, or just noting down my memories, noting down how my day went. Like that's how I used to use it, more so to document my life and how I was feeling any day. And that is great in itself, don't get me wrong. Like just stream of consciousness is really valuable in itself, because when you do that, you can also sometimes, if you really get into the flow of it, you can sit back after, reflect on what you just wrote and be like, whoa, I didn't know I was feeling that until I wrote it down. So that in itself is really important. Like getting all of your emotions out of you helps you reflect on them and then be able to, correct them and actually reflect on your thought patterns and everything afterwards. So that's great in itself. But specifically, I want to mention 3 modes of journaling that have really helped me in terms of this topic of overcoming my limiting beliefs specifically. So the first one is literally get a piece of paper, create a chart with 4 columns in it. In the first column, write down whatever it is you believe about the world, about yourself, whatever your core beliefs that you can identify are. It goes without saying that not everybody is going to know automatically what their core beliefs are. I think it really helped me that I've gone to therapy for a while, so I was able to pretty quickly write down like what are the negative patterns in my life and how do I perceive myself in the world and how could I change that and make it into a better way of thinking. But also just in general, I think a good way to get here to the point where you can recognize your core beliefs pretty easily is by simply becoming more self-aware day to day, learning how to kind of like take a step back day to day when you're in conversations, when you're going about your day-to-day life, and simply practice self-awareness and evaluate your behaviors and the things you're saying and the things you're thinking about yourself or about other people, and evaluating them from more of a third-party perspective instead of identifying with them, where you're in a conversation, you're feeling small or insecure, and having the self-awareness in that moment to reflect on, okay, why am I feeling small and insecure? Where is this coming from? Why am I needing to make myself lesser than in this conversation? Why am I not taking up space? And then you can then later on in the day write it down and be like, I noticed I did this today, and I noticed that I have this core belief that I need to make myself smaller to make other people feel comfortable. So that's like an example of how where it all really starts is developing the self-awareness to reflect on things throughout the day, where you realize your behaviors, like if you were a third person observing your behaviors, then writing down patterns that keep happening. And then once you observe those patterns, you can then extract the core beliefs from them. So for example, the people-pleasing one. The core belief would be, I need to make myself smaller so that people will like me. I need to make myself smaller so people feel comfortable around me. If I make myself smaller and if I people-please, I am a good person. That's the core belief. Next column would be, where does that core belief come from? Specifically, what is the fear that is holding you back? Like, what is it that you're so afraid of happening, and why are you clinging onto that limiting belief? Because it wouldn't be there for no reason. At the end of the day, the limiting belief is there to protect you. So don't make yourself feel bad about the fact that you have limiting beliefs. It's just about identifying them and being like, okay, why are they here? Why do they think they need to protect me? And then realizing once you just write it down, like literally just the act of writing it down and seeing it on paper, just that alone helps so much when you can look at it and see like, oh, this is totally an illusion. Like, this comes from a place of a story I fabricated for myself because of a few things that happened to me in childhood, and now I've taken this to be my whole truth. Like, once you put it on paper, it becomes very clear that limiting beliefs do not come from any place of truth. They come from fear, and they come from fabricated stories and programming that happened to you as you were growing up. So for me, I'd reflect on childhood, friendships I had maybe where people unknowingly, but they did do this, unknowingly made me feel smaller so that they could feel better about themselves. Being able to write down where the core belief came from also is really important, because then you can show yourself it is not a truth. It is an illusion, which just happens to now be wired in my brain, and I have the power to change it. Obviously, talking about like big T trauma and stuff like that is very different. I'm more so talking about general day-to-day core beliefs that everybody holds. When it comes to stuff like PTSD, I am not talking about that stuff. That is for therapy. That is like for a professional. I'm talking about your everyday, as they say, lowercase t trauma. In other words, like programmed beliefs, not as much as trauma, but just things that happened to you in childhood, which led you to become who you are now, which lead you to behave in certain ways. That's what I'm talking about. So I think that goes without saying, but I just wanted to preface that just in case. The next column would be why that's not true. For example, I would literally write out, the only reason I felt small was because the other person had to make themselves feel better about themselves because they were insecure. So literally writing out and showing myself that I understand why that thing was an illusion. And then in the next and final column, I would write down a new belief to correct that old belief with. And I'll literally ask myself, what is actually true here? What is objectively true here? So for example, with the people pleaser thing, I could write down, I am just as valuable and equal to everybody around me. Making myself smaller does not make me a good person, a more likable person. And I deserve to take up space, and I have the right to take up space and express my own thoughts and opinions on things. And people like me when I'm authentic. People like me when I take up space and when I own my energy, because that attracts more high vibe people anyways. My energy is magnetic when I take up space. Like all of these new things that I can use to replace that old negative thought pattern. And over time, if you keep writing down these things enough and reminding yourself of why your limiting beliefs are not true and of why the new beliefs you want to implement are fundamentally true, and also continuing to maintain that self-awareness day to day when you notice yourself acting in those limiting ways, when you notice that and you can correct it in that moment, it's like such a powerful, cool feeling. I've been in situations where I'm like in a conversation and I notice myself being smaller, like literally physically going like this. And I'll notice that, and I'll notice like, oh, that's what past me would do. That's what the insecure version of me would do. And so I'll literally will like open up my chest and stand up a little bit straighter and remind myself, I decided to become this version of myself who opens up her energy, who isn't small and insecure to make people like her, who wants to be magnetic, who has a big energy to attract the right people. So I think that's also a really fundamental part, is being able to correct the behaviors in that moment. And if you can't do that, it's okay. Like, that's also part of it, is not correcting the behaviors in the moment, but coming home at the end of the day and writing them down and being like, what did I notice that I did today that did not make me feel good in my energy, in ways that were limiting to me? And you can write it down and identify it. And that's another step forward. Just the identifying of it, that's another step forward to unwriting that as a truth and rewiring your brain into understanding that that is not the truth, and choosing to believe other things as the truth. So that was a very long-winded explanation, but that is a chart that I've done a few times now that really helped me. And I know it might sound silly, but literally just doing that a couple times, for me at least, it really, really put things into perspective for me. And again, it really contributed to me having more day-to-day self-awareness to then remind myself when I'm doing a negative behavior of my old self, to then be able to automatically recognize and remember why that behavior is based in an illusion, in a fear illusion, and then be able to quickly remind myself of what the belief I should replace it with is, you know? So I found that exercise very personally helpful. So it's one I would definitely recommend. Another one is scripting. Again, if you're in any self-helpy spiritual communities, you've probably heard of this. Also, just like the topic of manifestation is huge these days, and scripting is a really big part of that. So if you don't know what it is, scripting is basically when you sit down and you just write out in the present tense what your ideal future self would be writing. So for example, I woke up to the sunrise this morning with a beautiful view from my dream apartment. I woke up next to my dream partner and I did my dream job, whatever. Like, obviously don't write it like that. You would actually be writing out the details of your day and exactly how you want to be feeling, exactly what your apartment would feel like, exactly what tasks you would be doing throughout that day for your career, the traits of your partner, like every little detail. That's pretty much what scripting is, writing it down as if you were in that present moment. And especially, I think what's important in this for me has been really feeling into it as you're writing it. Like, the goal, I think, for scripting is ultimately when you're writing it, at first it might feel a little bit silly, but once you keep writing, once you start feeling excitement for it, like when you're getting yourself excited as you're writing it down about, like, this is going to be my future, like, that's the feeling I feel like you should be aiming for when you're scripting. If you haven't already done this type of stuff, this might sound a little bit woo-woo, but for me, it has really helped. And I would urge you to release any self-judgment when it comes to this type of stuff, because when it comes to scripting and affirmations and all of this stuff, at first it can feel really cheesy to be affirming to yourself in the mirror, I am beautiful, I am loved, I am worthy of all of my desires. Like, these things sound really cheesy, and literally writing down like something that isn't tangibly in the 3D yet does make you feel very delusional the first time you do it. But if you just overcome that self-judgment, like literally just let go of it, it is not serving you at all, just let go of it, and you just commit yourself to the practice, it can feel really good and it feels really exciting. And in my opinion, if it's not hurting anybody and it makes you feel good to do it and it makes you feel excited about your future, then why not? And also, for me, it helped me gain a lot of clarity about what I want my future life to look like by just scripting so many times that I would realize things throughout scripting that I maybe didn't even know I wanted in my life, but I would write down a very small detail about, like, yeah, I do want this in my life also, you know? So I think it also helps you gain clarity about what the future version of yourself looks like as well, which is very important for overcoming limiting beliefs as well, because like I said, not only is it about removing the negative thought patterns, it's about replacing them with more positive, optimistic ones. Lastly, I'm sure you've heard this so many times, but gratitude is so, so important. at the end of the day, again, on the topic of manifestation and everything like that, you attract what you give off. So if you're feeling ungrateful for every aspect of your life, then do you really think people are going to be wanting to offer you opportunities for no reason? If you have your head down all the time and you're just in a pissy mood, like, people aren't going to want to talk to you. Opportunities are not going to come to you. Whereas if you're grateful for what you already have and you talk to people more and you're just beaming with energy and excitement for life, people are attracted to that. Like, if you put yourself in the other person's shoes and you imagine somebody who's really down and not wanting to talk to you because they're ungrateful versus somebody who lights up when they see you just to talk to you, they're so excited, you're going to want to talk to the second person more so, you know? So try to imagine how maybe you're making other people feeling when you're in a grateful versus non-grateful state. And it just makes sense as to why gratitude literally helps you attract more opportunities. It's not some like witchcraft, like it literally just makes sense psychologically in terms of like human behavior. People are going to be more attracted to people who are open to them interacting with them. So writing down even like 3 to 5 things every day, like this is what I do now. It's really not much at all. Even if I've had a really shitty day, obviously we all have shitty days time to time, but I always make sure to dedicate myself to at least write down literally 3 things, to find 3 things I was grateful for that day. A lot of the time I'll write down my dog, my family, my friends, the grass, the sky, whatever. Like, it could be the most simple-minded things. It does not have to be extravagant. Obviously, it's best if you're able to dig into why you're grateful for that thing and write that out. I do that sometimes when I have more energy. But even if you have no energy, to just sit down at the beginning of the day or the end of the day and write down, I am grateful for the blue sky. I'm grateful for my dog. Like, these very simple things, if you just write that down even once a day, it might feel like it's not impacting you at all. But I feel like that micro shift in your brain after having like a really bad day, but just having that micro shift of reminding yourself that you still have it really good in some respects, like you can always find things to be grateful for, that over time, it just helps slowly wire your brain more in the direction of gratitude. And when you feel grateful, you feel abundant. Like when I've been in really pessimistic mindsets in my life, I feel like I am lacking everything. And it's crazy thinking back to it because during university, for example, I had access to a full education. I had friends all around me. I was living student life. I had it so good objectively, but I was such in a negative mindset that I could not see any of that. And as a result, I didn't attract that many new friends or experiences or opportunities as I could have throughout university because I was so in my own head about what I didn't have. Whereas now in my life, even though to some people my life might look very boring and non-glamorous, like I literally walk dogs for a living right now. I'm going back to school in September. I'm not super rich or anything. Like, there's nothing that exciting, you could say, happening in my life. But I feel so grateful and abundant and excited about everything because I remind myself on a daily basis of what I have. Like, there are some days I'm so grateful and excited just for the fact that I get to walk outside with dogs for hours, or just how delicious the food is that I get to eat, or the fact that I get to feel the wind on my skin. Like, really, really small things, you can always find something to be grateful for. And if you practice gratitude more and more often, generally you just feel more expansive and it just feels better to be in that state. And honestly, I feel like being in a state of gratitude also kind of helps you forget about your limiting beliefs, because when you feel so good and abundant and expansive, it's kind of hard to be in the mindset of, oh, I don't deserve this thing because I didn't work hard enough for it, or, oh, they won't like me because I disagreed with them. Like, when you're feeling so grateful and abundant, it's hard to think those negative thoughts, you know? So yeah, those are 3 journaling practices that have helped me a lot, and I would recommend them. Maybe even right now, as you're watching this video, I dare you to look around the room, find 3 things you're grateful for, and even better, explain to yourself why you're grateful for them. Okay, so the second thing I have written down in the actionable steps section is daily awareness, just like noticing your inner dialogue and everything. I'm not going to go too much into this point because I've already talked about it a lot throughout this video, but I'll give you a brief example just to re-emphasize this point. So, for example, for me right now, on top of dog walking and pet portrait commissions and stuff, I just added video editing, freelance video editing to my roster of freelance stuff that I'm doing. And because it's a more new thing for me to be editing for other people, it has been harder for me to believe that I'm fully capable, even though I've been working on limiting beliefs and stuff for a while. When there's something new that you're adding to it, you have to remind yourself again why you're capable. So I have caught myself a few times definitely telling myself like, oh my God, you're being so big-headed. How could you think you could edit a video for this person? And because of the self-awareness I've developed, I'm able to, instead of agree with that thought and get all down on myself and procrastinate the task, I'm able to catch that thought and be like, girl, hold up. The only reason you're feeling like you're not capable to do this thing is because you're telling yourself you're not capable. Like, I have all the technical skills I need to edit this video. Even if I didn't, I could look it up on YouTube and find a way to do it. Like, literally anybody is fully capable to do whatever it is they put their mind to. If they just find a way that works for them to do it, you can do it. Like, that is simply the actual truth. So being able to catch your thoughts in any given moment and remind yourself the only reason you might feel not capable to do something is because you're telling yourself you're not capable. If you stop telling yourself you're not capable, then you will simply just do it. Like, it's very straightforward when you actually think of it. So that's just a little illustration of how day-to-day self-awareness is really important, because that can literally be the difference between you sitting around all day because you're too scared to start working on something versus shutting down that negative thought and then simply working on it and then doing it because you know you can. Once you start practicing self-awareness, you start noticing patterns and you start correcting those patterns subconsciously over time. Like, it eventually becomes so natural to question your behaviors instead of just going along with them. And I know that might sound hard to believe because obviously the way that we behave day to day is largely subconscious, but I truly noticed when I started practicing any level of self-awareness, it becomes hard for me not to notice those patterns. For number 3, I wrote down meditation and visualization. I'm not gonna lie, I have not been very on top of meditating lately, but I will say in the times that I have meditated, the reason it's so valuable for overcoming limiting beliefs, for shifting into the next version of yourself, whatever it is, the reason meditation is so helpful is because it truly just recenters you. It just grounds you. It takes you away from whatever anxious or sad or whatever negative or positive, like all of the thoughts of your day. It just gives your brain and body a second to disconnect from it and purely just focus on the physicality of existing. I feel like that then gives you the space in your energy to start imagining other ways of being and to really put yourself into the shoes of what it would feel like if you were the version of yourself who had overcome all of her or his limiting beliefs, you know? It really just gives you the space to simply imagine, to just imagine the most exciting and most extravagant things that you could have for your life, to just sit in what it would feel like, what it would look like, what it would smell like, to live in that reality. Like, literally to close your eyes, meditate, recenter, reground yourself. And then as you're in that state, it's like a blank canvas. You've now grounded yourself. Your thoughts are just passing clouds and you're able to project on this blank canvas now, imagining exactly what it would feel like, what it would taste like, what it would smell like to be in your ideal life, to be your ideal self. And it's so powerful too, because if you didn't know this, it actually is a fact that our minds don't know the difference between physically something being here and us vividly imagining it. I'll try to find an article on this maybe somewhere and link it down below, but I might butcher this, but I have heard about this study where there were like 2 groups of people. One group actually physically would like lift a weight, like do strength training with one of their fingers or their thumb or something, like every day for however long. One group physically did it. One group was instructed to just like for 10 minutes a day or something to imagine doing the same thing, but just imagining it, not actually doing any physical training. And they found that the group who just mentally imagined it still had a muscle mass increase. I don't think it was as much as the physical, but they still had a muscle mass increase just by imagining it. That's pretty crazy. So that just goes to show you the power of your mind. So that's why it's so important, like feeling into that future version of yourself over time, just developing a more and more clear version of exactly what that life would feel like in your mind's eye, then makes it that much more real to your subconscious self, believing that you can be that. So that's why this is so important. Okay, the 4th one is vision boards. This one is just very simple and fun to do, and you can do it at literally any time. Like, literally sometimes if I'm feeling a little bit down, I'll just go onto Pinterest and work on adding things that inspire me to the vision board. I've made physical vision boards where I'll literally glue it all together and make it that way, or I'll make it digitally first and then glue it into my journal or something, or you could just make digital ones. I've done that before. Pinterest boards, like there are so many different ways in which you can make vision boards, and it's just always so fun. And again, you just get that feeling of being so excited about what your life could look like. And yeah, it's pretty much just like a tangible manifestation of the visualization that you'd be doing in your head anyways, and just making like a tangible visual version of it. So that one is just very fun. And I think just developing that view of your future self, your future life, your 2.0 version of yourself, whatever, developing a more clear and strong view of that over time also helps you to more heavily identify with that version of yourself versus the past version of yourself who has the limiting belief. This next one, number 5, is simply health and wellness, like literally physically just taking care of yourself, working out, eating well, drinking water, getting good sleep. I am not amazing at this all the time, especially the sleep one. I really struggle with, and I go through phases of working out not at all, or working out every day, working out a few times a week, whatever. We all go through ebbs and flows, and that's okay. But overall, I feel like it's important to do at least a few things every day to take care of yourself physically, because at the end of the day, it's really hard to overcome limiting beliefs when you feel like crap. Like if you are feeling depressed and lethargic all the time, it is really hard to also then try to overcome limiting beliefs and work on your thought patterns and stuff. If you're physically feeling like crap, it's really hard to mentally be feeling amazing. So I feel like it all works in tandem, and it's really important to take care of your physical health so that you can also work on your mindset with the most energy that you can. I also feel like when you're treating yourself negatively physically, you're subconsciously reaffirming negative behaviors, negative self-talk, and you're kind of subconsciously telling yourself that you're not good enough, you're disrespecting yourself, you're self-sabotaging, all of that fun stuff. You're kind of doing all of that subconsciously when you are treating yourself poorly. I know for me, times in my life when I struggled with binge eating, I was doing that because on some level, I thought I subconsciously deserved that I deserved to feel physically horrible all of the time. I know that sounds crazy, but that's why I use the word subconscious. It's not something you're aware of, but at the end of the day, I think a lot of negative physical behaviors like not moving your body and eating crap, it's all to ultimately fill some type of void, to soothe yourself, to comfort yourself. And it's when you do that, you're reaffirming to yourself that you can't soothe yourself and comfort yourself in just existing, in just being yourself. And so I feel like it's really important to nourish your body, take care of your body. That reaffirms to you that you do respect yourself and that you can hold these positive self-beliefs. Number 6 is simply just taking action. And this one, I know this sounds very simple, but if you think about it, you are never going to get to the version of yourself who has overcome all of her or his limiting beliefs if you never take any action on it, literally. Simply by getting yourself out of your comfort zone on a regular basis, you're then confirming to yourself that you actually can completely do things outside of what you previously thought you were limited to. So for example, for me, literally simply the act of reaching out and getting a client for video editing was me affirming to myself that I can be a video editor. Like, I know it sounds very simple, but it's so important and so underrated to just literally take that first step. It goes without saying, if you want to be an artist, you're going to have to sell a painting. But the difference between thinking that versus actually getting outside of your comfort zone and selling your painting is so different. Like, you need to get outside of your comfort zone for that first time so that you can then do it all of the times after, because it's that first time when you actually take the physical action for the first time that you're showing yourself, okay, I am capable of getting outside of the previous version of myself who believed she couldn't be an artist. Like, it's literally just physically confirming in your 3D reality that you already can be that version of yourself. You literally just have to take action on it. And it's like a feedback loop. Like, you see one time that you can do something that you previously didn't think you could do, and then you believe you can do it even more. So then you're able to have more output in that aspect of your life, and so on and so forth. And it just keeps affirming itself to you that you are the version of yourself who can do all of those things. So with all of that said, the last thing I wanted to talk about for this topic, also thank you if you're still here, if you're still watching this video, comment a star emoji. And I just want to know that you're still here because this episode I know is going to be so long, but I've been really excited to record it for a really long time. So I have a lot to say. Anyways, with all that being said, this next and final section I want to talk about is overcoming the difficulties that come with overcoming your limiting beliefs. One of the main ones, I would say, one of the main ones I think people are really scared of, and one that I was really scared of for a long time, but I simply don't care as much anymore, is the fact that a lot of people will probably think you're delusional once you start overcoming your limiting beliefs. Because on the outside, it will look like somebody starting a business that people think is just bound to fail, or somebody starting a new YouTube channel and they're getting 10 views per video, and people on the outside might be criticizing and saying that's so delusional that they think their YouTube channel is going to grow. But the reason those people were able to do those things is because they decided to exist and take action outside of their limiting beliefs. So how it appears on the outside, people will inevitably judge you for it, and people might call you delusional. But two things. First of all, being delusional is not a bad thing. Jim Carrey, there's that famous story that he wrote himself $1 million check one day, and he knew that somehow he would get that one day, and of course he did. He became the Jim Carrey. So there's so many examples like that, especially of celebrities and very successful people who would have been seen as delusional before. But I feel like delusional is a word that insecure people use to describe people who simply have hope, who simply have faith in themselves that they can do something. And when somebody else is not in a space where they have that self-belief and they see somebody going for what they want, that is just them projecting how they feel about themselves. So yeah, number one, being delusional is not a bad thing. Number two, if you want to use the word delusional in a negative context, then you could say those people who have those very closed-minded views, they're the ones who are delusional, because pretty much the way they are thinking is in this very narrow frame of this is the way I was told the world is and what I can do with my life, and I'm only doing this. In my opinion, that is delusional, because the reality of things is that you have control over your life and you can decide to do so much more with it if you simply want to. Like, that is the ultimate truth. And I feel like it's delusional to not believe that. So just gotta flip the script, just gotta switch the narrative in your head. On kind of that same stream of thought, another thing to overcome that is inevitable is, like I kind of talked about a little bit earlier in terms of feeling silly when you're doing affirmations for yourself, there are inevitably going to be points where you feel yourself like you're delusional, where you're doubting yourself. I feel like in general, we are kind of programmed to have a bias for negative thought patterns and beliefs. I mean, first of all, just like biologically, we have negative bias because of evolution and like survival reasons. It makes sense why we have that negative bias. But then on top of that, society tells us growing up these very bitter realities about the world, like just wait until you get to the real world, like calling people who have dreams and big goals, calling them naive and idealistic, calling them crazy, calling them immature. Like generally the way I think the world and media and everything as a whole frames things is in a very pessimistic, negative way, where people assume that you're not going to be able to successfully start that business. You're not going to be able to successfully find that partner. And everybody just kind of settles for misery. And then everybody jokes about it, saying, this is just how things are, and this is just life, and it just sucks. And that's kind of the overall narrative of society. And so it's no wonder why you would feel delusional in yourself when you start challenging those beliefs that are so heavily integrated in you. So I definitely still have moments where I make myself feel crazy at the idea that I can be a successful video editor, a successful content creator, a successful artist. Like, I still have moments where I'm like, maybe it would have been easier to just go into corporate, to just stay in my insurance job and simply just do that for the security and safety of it. So it's really about making that voice of hope and of knowing that you can attain your future goals, and of knowing that if you keep your mind stuck to a goal, then it is possible. It's really just about strengthening that narrative so that it overcomes your old narrative and becomes your automatic way of thinking. Instead of your automatic way of thinking being that it won't work out, your automatic way of thinking becoming that it will work out. And I truly feel like I have done this in my brain, and it's crazy how different it feels, where my main way of thinking used to be that something might not work out. I'd be worried about getting a bad mark on a test. I'd be worried about, I would just be assuming the worst. And this has happened so many times. An example I can give is when I was on exchange in the Netherlands, I submit an essay to my professor, and I didn't hear back for a really long time. And I worked really hard on this essay, and I was really proud of it. And I didn't hear back for so long. And so in my head, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get 30% on this. And then a couple days later, after worrying so much about it, I got an email from him, and he had said, this is one of my favorite essays that I've ever read from a student. And I'm not saying this to brag, but it did make me feel very good. But that was just such a clear moment and a clear example for me of showing myself how strong my negative bias was and of how untrue it was. And there are so many examples I could give where I've had a negative bias towards something, assuming that somebody hates me, that somebody's mad at me, that I got a bad mark on something, that somebody is just being nice to me when they tell me they like my art, that they don't actually like it, they're just trying to make me feel good. All of these negative biases, that is how my brain mainly used to work. Whereas now for the most part, I feel like I assume that I'll do well on that test or whatever. I assume that somebody will like the art that I made. If I'm proud of it, then I feel like they should like it too. Or if I'm proud of a video, I assume that it will be successful, because if I like it, then hopefully other people will like it too. I feel like my main mode of thinking now is an optimistic bias where I assume things will work out. When that optimistic voice is stronger than the pessimistic one, it doesn't mean you're going to stop having pessimistic thoughts, because that's just sometimes how the human brain works, is you're going to doubt yourself at times and you're going to question yourself. But ultimately, if you can really stay strong in simply the truth that if you stick to something, then you will eventually achieve that goal. Obviously, if you give in to the negative thoughts, that is how you don't achieve it. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you start a business, for example, and then you assume it's not going to work out, so you stop trying, of course it's not going to work out. Versus if you have those thoughts of, oh no, it's not going to work out, but then you're so adamant about maintaining your belief that ultimately it will work out, even if you have moments of self-doubt, that is how people get successful, is they're the ones who don't give up. Of course it's going to fail if you think it's going to fail. Of course it's going to succeed if you think it's going to succeed, because you won't give in to those moments of doubt. You'll just keep trying after the fact. And the last thing I'll mention that I feel like is hard to overcome when you're trying to challenge your limiting beliefs is when your environment isn't immediately reflecting what you want kind of your new reality to reflect. So, for example, me overcoming the limiting belief where I told myself I can't be a content creator, I can't be a YouTuber. At this point in time, my main channel only has 760 subscribers or something like that, and I've had this channel for a long time and I don't even have 1,000 subscribers yet. So it's been very easy for me to get down on myself for that and to just tell myself well, your current reality isn't reflecting what you tell yourself you eventually want to achieve, so why would you believe that you can still achieve it? And it can be really easy to give into those thoughts when after a while of working on something that it's not happening. All I will say to that is it's important to keep putting energy into that thing, because of all of the versions of yourself, the version who does reach 1,000 subscribers, 10,000 subscribers, 50,000 subscribers, whatever, the version of you who does reach that is the version of you who simply keeps posting despite the times when they had 100 subscribers and didn't think it was possible. The only version of you who can get past that is the one who keeps trying. At the end of the day, it really is that simple. When your external reality isn't yet reflecting how you want things to be, that doesn't affirm that it's not possible. That just means that you don't have it tangibly right now, but you will have it if you simply keep trying. I also feel like, especially nowadays, it's really easy to get discouraged in this respect of your reality not immediately reflecting to you what you want, because on social media, we see so many cases of a 16-year-old kid blowing up overnight after posting 2 videos, and then they're just set for life. They're just so successful. We see those narratives online so much, obviously, because the internet will highlight those things. These crazy success stories are going to be what you're seeing online. And so I feel like we've all developed this view of social media, especially if you want to do content creation, where there's this expectation that if you just post a few times, you're gonna suddenly blow up. Obviously, 99% of the time that is not true. And if you look at 99% of celebrities and influencers and whoever, The ones who succeeded are the ones who simply persevered and kept on going. So when your reality doesn't immediately reflect that success, it doesn't mean you failed just because some 16-year-old happened to blow up overnight. Not everybody is that 16-year-old. So with all of this being said, I will conclude with this, which is simply that limiting beliefs are objectively wrong, and I will tell you why. The reason is that the only way in which a limiting belief could be true is if you choose to maintain having that limiting belief. Like the limiting belief that you can't obtain $10,000 easily, whatever. That limiting belief, the only reason that would remain true is if you keep telling yourself it's true. If you stop telling yourself that you can't do that, then automatically you've broken down that wall between you and that possibility. Like it's literally, think about it as literally just a bunch of doors and they're all closed if you have limiting beliefs. The act of maintaining those limiting beliefs means those doors have locks on them. Like it's not even a possibility to you. As soon as you decide to not think in that way and you open up all the doors, there you go. There's all of these options for you to pursue. At the end of the day, it's as simple as this. If you let your limiting beliefs hold you back, then they will. If you don't let them, then they won't. Like, I know that's a really simplified version of it. And obviously there are a lot of barriers in life, like socioeconomic status, race, class, like all of these things that shouldn't dictate anything about where our lives go, but do contribute to some opportunities that people have access to. Obviously that stuff is real and it comes into play, and I cannot understand all of those experiences. But what I can say is that whatever your beliefs about yourself are and whatever you believe you have limits to, then that will be true for you. If you tell yourself, oh, well, I can't access this thing because I was born here, then that will be true for you because you're telling yourself 100% you can't do it. If you simply choose to not believe in that and you choose to believe that it is possible for you, then automatically that door is open to you. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to walk right through it. Obviously, you have to work for it, but it's a difference between literally just opening that as an option to yourself. Like, you're not going to get to your dream life if you don't first consider it as a possibility for you. So when you look at it that way, literally any limiting beliefs that any person on this planet has, they are simply objectively not based in truth and reality, because the truth and reality of things is that anybody, no matter who you are, if you decide that you want something and you decide you're capable of doing something and then you go for that thing, you can do it, because the only person dictating that is yourself. The only person who can get in your way is yourself. The only person who can get there is yourself. So like I said at the beginning of this video, if somebody like me who has perpetually struggled with feeling small and feeling like it would be impossible for me to do something which required so much assertiveness and maintaining my own belief in my worth and my value, like posting YouTube videos and running my own business, like those things require me to have those traits that I never thought that I could exude. And so if somebody like me who felt like she was the antithesis of that, the antithesis of knowing her worth, can now become somebody who knows her worth and refuses to give that up, if I can do it, then you can do it. I promise you, because I feel like I started at the very bottom of the spectrum in terms of self-belief. Like, I feel like I started the smallest you can start. Like, genuinely, I don't feel like a small person anymore. I don't feel like my purpose is to serve other people. I feel like my purpose is to make the most out of my life that I can, so that I can also then help other people in a genuine, authentic way. Whereas it used to be because I just wanted them to like me. Now it's, I want to make the most of my life for myself and others. And the only reason I was able to work on this and change so much is because I challenged those core beliefs. I literally just questioned, why is it that I think this way about myself? Why is it that I behave this way? Why is it that I make myself so small? And literally just reflecting on it for a bit and developing day-to-day self-awareness about it and small day-to-day practices to continue overcoming it. A year later, or a couple years later, like generally in the last couple year of my life, I'm such a different person now, even to 6 months ago. Like, I feel like now I automatically question myself when I do self-sabotage, when I do make myself feel smaller, when I'm unkind to myself. I automatically now question that and try to correct it and remind myself why I don't deserve that and why I do deserve, what I want for my life. And now existing in this very different space, like it's literally just opening your eyes to the possibilities of the world around you. It's such a magical thing. And life feels so much more exciting when you give yourself permission to believe that there is so much more possible for you and so much more waiting for you in your life. It just feels so much more exciting because then you have the agency to decide that you will have a good life, that you will make a good life for yourself. Whereas when you're just acting as you think you should be acting, that is not living. That is simply just surviving. And it feels so much better to feel like you can actually dictate your life, because you can. The overarching message I would want somebody to take from this video is simply that the way you are living your life now, if it's not the way you want to be living your life, you don't have to keep doing it. Like, it is up to you to change how you approach things, to change how you think about yourself, to believe that bigger things are possible for you. Ultimately, you are the number one agent of your life. Whatever your external circumstances are, I can't understand all of those circumstances. Obviously, I can only speak to my own experience. But one thing that is true for everybody, no matter what your circumstances are, is that you have the most autonomy over your life than anybody else ever could. You ultimately control your reactions to things and how you perceive things. And at the end of the day, everything is perception. So you can either choose to believe that you're not capable, that it's impossible for you, or you can choose to believe that it is possible for you and that it will happen. At the end of the day, it's very simple. No matter who you are, choose that it's possible, choose that it's not possible. So if there's one takeaway from this video, I guess that's what it would be. But anyways, I'm sure there's so much more I could say, and I could ramble on forever about this topic, but it has been like 2 hours that I've been talking and I have to go do other things. So yeah, I really, really appreciate you if you stuck around to the end of this video. I really, really, truly hope that you got something out of this. I feel like a lot of what I said is just reiterating things I've heard all over the internet, but it also helps me, I feel like, solidify this stuff in my head as I say it out loud. So I hope it could bring you some value. Hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you gained something from this, or maybe you just got even more clarity on this topic, even if you already knew everything I said. I feel like it doesn't hurt to like drill it in further into your head, So yeah, I hope you gained something positive out of this video. I hope that you are leaving this video feeling like things are possible for you, feeling like you have more self-belief leaving this video than you did coming into it, because I'm not saying it to be cheesy or to make you feel good. Like, I'm saying it because it is true. You are capable of whatever you want to do. You are capable. If you decide that you are capable, then you are capable. Like, that's literally all it takes. So anyways, if you made it to the very end of this video, comment below the blue butterfly emoji. That would be so cute. Or a fairy emoji. I don't know. Anyways, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, thank you for all of the support on the last episode. And I look so forward to continuing to grow this community. And yeah, I feel like this will be a beautiful and supportive and loving community of people that we're growing here. So thank you for being here. And as always, leave below any experiences, comments, thoughts, opinions regarding this topic. So with all that being said, thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. I hope you have a lovely day or a lovely afternoon or evening, whatever time it is where you are. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye.